Here's my problem is I've yet to see the Jupiter project. I've yet to see any information, and it's circulating online and whatnot. I've yet no. I take that back.
Officially.
I'm sorry. I've read what's been put out online. No one has submitted anything to the council.
That's right.
And I can't remember. Do you recall when that particular contract was signed?
The MOU on Jupiter was signed in the fall, early
September,
fall of last year.
Fall of last year. So
Yeah.
I was on the council.
It was supposed to have already been implemented
Yes.
by the end of the year.
I was on the council in the fall
And you
of
got nothing.
2016, and we got nothing.
I have a question about
Yes.
that.
Uh-huh.
So are we assuming that this decision was made by the committee?
Economic development.
Is that it? The committee where nobody-
No, it was
Redevelopment.
Economic Development Corporation because that's
Right.
Spokane.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is subject to no public oversight.
Exactly.
But the mayors, or not even the mayors?
Well, the mayor is Spokane.
Right, but I'm saying, so let's pretend that it's not. Is it subject to the mayor's oversight?
Yes.
At the very least.
At the
But
very
not the
least,
common council.
and there is a economic development.
But they'll be over to the
commission.
council because they want another TIF
There-
district.
Well, there are two representatives from the council on the Economic Development Commission. That would be Ron Brewer and Herb Smith. And then
You're
there
kidding.
are 3 appointments.
How did they get on?
The president makes that decision. The president of the council makes that
Oh my
decision.
I'm
God.
gonna boo and hiss now. Boo.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have two worse people,
Oh, well.
especially Herb Smith,
And we're
who's
gonna- and we're
trying
gonna
to make
go,
deals behind the scenes with Chicago and Higginbotham and Daley.
And we're going to go back to the views expressed by the
Yes.
hosts of the show.
Yeah,
And
my
our
views.
guests are not necessarily those
My
of
views, my laugh.
WLTH or its advertisers.
Correct.
Now, somebody from the Hoosier Environmental Council said that he thinks where they got the name Jupiter from was JPIT, because they are being, once again, filed against because
Yes.
of all the irregularities at that landfill.
Yes. And although I heard about the issues that Jupiter, that the JPIT is having, I've not had anything officially come before the council
See, I
that
think
demonstrates.
the council, if it doesn't have information, cannot do anything.
It's difficult to make decisions. It's difficult to pass ordinances.
No, it's all pressure from the mayor's office,
It's
pressure
difficult.
from here.
Yes.
And if there's any members on any committee that the council are recommending, there has to be some type of report back. There has to be some type of accountability for those individuals on whatever committees.
And
they're
Herb
on.
Smith was not elected
Well,
by popular vote.
by popular vote.
They call them one term.
And this, when you have appointments to committees, I was the chair of boards and commissions on this past year. No longer on that committee. And matter of fact, I've been
Ron
reduced down to like the ambulance committee and like art history committee or something like that.
You are kidding.
I'm not on. I'm really not on.
Can you
any,
tell us how it's decided who
Yes,
gets on what
yeah,
committee?
Absolutely.
Ron Brewer.
The president puts together the committees. Basically, what you do is you let them know what committees that you're on. But what happens is the couple months prior to the 1st of January, all of the positioning begins to take place. So you try to persuade this person to vote for you for president. You try to persuade this person to vote for you for president. Once you get your majority, then you say, okay, what committees do you want to be on? Okay.
So it's not just you. We have to
Right.
assume that Reagan is no longer in charge of planning.
Of course not.
And anybody else?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Rebecca's no longer in charge of parks or public safety.
It's a small
And none of us, and as you know, we knew that was going to happen if we did not win the presidency. And so our position is okay, now we've learned our job, especially myself and Rebecca. We've learned our job, and it was such a great experience just diving into the deep end. We've learned our job, and now it's time for us to really get down and dirty with the tasks at hand.
Right.
And so our position this year is going to be a little nittier, a little grittier.
Will you be on the committee but not in charge?
Well, no, I only have ambulance.
So you can't even be on the other committees?
I can attend the meetings.
Oh my God, that sounds like.
And I can
So
give
who's
input.
in charge of finance now?
Mary Brown. It went back
Mary
to
Brown, who
yeah.
is up on charges for holding 2 jobs. No?
Well,
She works for the Gary Sanitary District,
she works for the Gary Sanitary District,
which
and
is
she's
poisoning us. I'll tell you that later.
And
Is that the council person that tells somebody to mind their business?
the views
Facebook
expressed
Live?
on this
That's
show.
That's not a view. That's a fact. I want you all to go to Councilperson Sparks.
I couldn't find it.
Wade's Facebook page.
I could not find
and
it.
watch this.
I was there
Facebook-
looking for it.
We had a
Okay.
back and forth on Facebook about
Yeah, we
parliamentary
did.
procedure. Everybody,
We
I'm in a
did.
sorority. I'm in Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated.
Yeah.
And when I tell you we had to learn Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm like who?
Right.
Where?
And
you
I
can't call people out of order
right.
for no reason and then leave.
I
I wanted to grab my
appreciate it.
copy and be like, what have you read? What page is that on? What you-
Excuse me, that must be edition 72.
I read
Because
and we don't use edition 72. We use 71.
That's
because
right.
anyway.
yeah.
You know what? And that's what I appreciated your comments, because everybody's not familiar with parliamentary procedure. I had to learn. That was one of the tools that
Yeah.
I had to learn Robert's Rules of Order.
And rightfully so.
Absolutely, because guess what? And this is what happens.
Because Renzer interprets it against you. Mr. Renzer, who holds 3 jobs and doesn't even live in Gary.
Ruth, you're treacherous. And I don't have anything personally against Richard Williams. I really don't.
No.
I have nothing against him. But this is what happened. And I'll just give you one example. When we were discussing the GEO group,
Oh, I remember
did
that.
you all remember
I was there.
when we had to take a break to
Yes.
decide which
A
Robert's
half-hour
Rules of Order
break at 9
edition
o'clock at night.
we were going to use?
I was hungry.
Whether we were going to use edition 10 or edition 11.
I had
right.
to use the facilities. I wasn't sure I was going to get back in. We actually had to have a conference. If we leave we get back in, girl, no, probably not.
Okay, how can one who says that they are professional, one who says that they are familiar with parliamentary procedure, one who says that they have a law degree, actually entertain the thought that we use an older edition of Robert's Rules of
Rather
Order
than the
one
current
with the
edition.
new?
Well, it
And
depends
so-
which one favors me.
and that's the openness and the transparency
But
that
the
we're talking about.
GEO was worse because Renzer making these decisions had also been the chair
of the zoning board.
of the
Yes.
zoning board and was one of the only votes in support of GEO, so he was triple dipping.
And this is the openness and transparency. People may not like the fact that we're bringing this information out, but it's not for us to like. It is for us to be
know.
able to know
Absolutely.
and to be able to make informed decisions.
Yes, yes.
So
There's just been, I mean, every time they tell us one thing, I went down to get some information through a FOIA request
Mhm.
about the demolitions that are going on,
okay.
because we had been told that all these demolitions, which were clearing the path for Mayako, we wanted to know whether anybody living in Gary was working on any of these demolitions.
Yes.
So they told us that they couldn't answer our request because none of these had anything to do with Mayako. And then Van Dyke said, no, none of those demolitions have anything to do with Mayako. Well, we had been told that all of those demolitions that the city was paying for
Okay.
was to open the door for Mayako to use the land.
Okay. Okay.
And now we're told No, Mayako's not involved at all, and you can't have that information, and we don't know how many local people were hired.
Right.
And on top of it, we still don't know who the stakeholders are in Mayako.
No, we don't. And
Their 6-month limit is up.
that was another project. That is another project in which we had to demand information. We got the information from the public before
You got it from
we
the
ever
city.
officially got the information from the city. And so that's extremely disappointing. I don't know that the demolitions that are going on, I don't know what their plan is, because
'Cause they
nothing
didn't
else,
share it with
no
you.
follow-up has to come. No, they didn't. But no follow-up has to come through
The council?
the council. We don't
Wow.
determine whether or not they're meeting, again, their benchmarks. We don't determine whether or not they will continue in their 20, 25-year contract. We don't make those decisions. It goes through redevelopment.
And redevelopment is out of line, totally.
Yeah.
They're
So-
not accountable,
Well, and you
and
know,
they don't report out. They also said by now we would have a Gary representative.
yes, they did, and
Or
we
they're
don't.
totally in line and doing what whoever has emboldened
Yes.
them with these powers has in mind for them to do. It
Right.
could be either or.
Oh,
I
you're
don't
so
know.
cynical.
I'm not cynical, I'm just presenting options. They're options.
Well, that's another piece of government that we would like to see.
How do we change this?
Well, the redevelopment commission is created through city ordinance, and back I believe
the 70s.
original
Under Hatcher?
Hatcher, it was under Hatcher, and it was supposed to be a department created so that it could make it easier to redevelop blighted communities. That's what the premise was. And, unfortunately, we end up shifting a bulk of responsibility over to Joe Van Dyke, where he has hundreds of properties that he's taken off the tax rolls and put on in city ownership. And what does that do for our community? Okay, so we say that it takes $100,000 for us to clear off a block, and because of title searches and all of the things that go into making sure that
Oh, but Mayako
property
was
is
going
on
to
it.
pay for all that.
And Mayako was going to pay for that all up front. And we haven't seen anything done.
Not a penny.
No, we haven't. We haven't seen anything done. So, one thing that I would like to see before we go to break, and I'm going to announce the break for you.
You'll never get me to break.
I would like to see the redevelopment department have to come through the council. One of the things that they did this year, when they left their office at 839 Broadway, a free building, a building that the city owns, and moved into 504 Broadway, where they're now paying rent.
That's right.
And that
And
should be...
didn't the city take that whole property and make it nice so they could give it to somebody?
That was another TIF district.
That was another tip.
$3 million, $2.875 million project
Wow.
that they used TIF district money for private
So-
purposes.
And on that note, we're gonna
On
take
that
a-
note,
we're
but
gonna take
don't
a
go
quick-
away because you think you've heard it, but you've heard nothing. It's just incredible.
Yes.
How could they? There is no accountability for the redevelopment commission.
There's
None
no
whatsoever.
accountability for redevelopment, for economic development. These two
And the corporation is totally private.
Yes, it does.
It's
It is.
nothing but Bo Kemp.
And unfortunately, both of those were created by ordinance, or fortunately. Okay. Yeah.
Somebody's whispering. We have no secrets on the air.
I remember that one. Let me write that one down before I.
Yeah.
Oh, this all, it's just, and what you said about
I want to talk more about what we can do to change this.
Yeah, that's what say. What you say about people being, alienated from the process. That's what all this is for. Of course, who wants to sit up and see people? I mean, unless there's an actual chance of fisticuffs, who wants to sit up and see people argue all the time? And just Lois Common, she told somebody to mind their business.
So the vice president of the Common Council, Mary, is the head of finance.
Yes.
This is insane.
And who's the head of planning?
I think that was Herb.
He's also on the.
I'm almost positive that's Herb.
I mean,
I'm almost positive that's Herb.
We'll be back in 10 seconds.
I left my
I am horrified. Linda Caldwell, what do they give her?
Boards and commissions.
She's not even conscious at the meetings.
She never says anything. All she does is vote. She doesn't say anything. Not a thing.
Are you angry yet? No, I'm not on yet.
I don't know. Am I angry? Yeah, of course I'm angry, but it's almost like how do you help people move past all this disenfranchisement to show up and start holding people accountable? I think that's
where we're going to go next.
How do we do that? Okay, I'm gonna bring this back up.
Okay. You are back with Issues and Answers with Laurel and Ruth with our special guest, LaVetta Spark Wade, and we're talking about how do we change this ridiculous situation? How can we have some accountability built into echo, the Gary Redevelopment Commission as an example.
Again, the Gary Redevelopment Commission is created by city ordinance. So it will take city ordinance to change it.
And who makes the ordinances?
The city council.
Okay.
So
step one.
That's step one. And if you want to see something like that change, look, the 9 people on the council represent the people of this city. And it's the people. When you put pressure on elected officials, guess what? You'll get the results that you want. The GO group did not go forth because there was so much pressure from the public.
That's right.
That no one would have been able to survive. Because what ended up happening was even those people who were for the GO group
voted against it. Yes. Showing their backbone, right?
Absolutely.
Their inability to even stand for what they stand for.
Absolutely. One thing that I did want to go back to, we had an issue on the council at the towards the end of the meeting. Councilwoman in 1st District, Rebecca Wyatt, this past council meeting, made a motion to put the attorney's position out for bid.
Yes.
And city ordinance states that any professional services in which the cumulative salary is more than $25,000 or more must be put out for bid. Basically, you have to publish an RFP with all of the details. An RFP is a request for proposal.
Yes.
And it has to be submitted for the public to be able to apply for that sort of a position. Okay? Not only that, but it also must go before the council for approval. And when Councilwoman Wyatt made the motion, I think it was Councilwoman Rogers who seconded. So we had a properly moved and seconded motion on the floor, which our president decided was not a good motion.
Out of order. I don't like that motion.
I feel that it takes me to explain what happened, to give commentary to it.
Please do.
Because when the motion was made, I was like, oh, wow, okay, let's see what's going to happen. And then he he started with that gavel. I think I said last time, I know that gavel well. He started with that gavel. I'm like, is he calling out? Like, you can't call a motion out of order. And I'm sitting there like, is he? And then when he got up and left, I feel like he may as well have thrown the gavel at y'all and got up and left, because that's how. And again, if you know parliamentary procedure,
A coward's response.
Cherie Gervais, I see you. You know we know that Robert's Rules of Order. So if you know parliamentary procedure, you make a motion. The motion has to be voted on. If it well, first of all, it has to be seconded. If it doesn't get a second, it dies. It has to be voted on. There has to be conversation on the motion. Then you vote for it to pass. You can't just arbitrarily call a motion out of order unless somebody makes a point of order with the way that the motion is made. So if there's already a motion on the floor, then of course, yes, then that the second motion in the middle of the first, none of that happened.
Right, exactly.
None of that. And it was like, as you were still talking,
Right.
he's hitting the gavel. And then, so my question is, where is the accountability there? At what point can any position on the council, not just the president position, at what point can a person be recalled for behavior unbecoming, for some type of gross negligence,
a violation of Robert's rules,
biased behavior, something?
And here is where it is important that when you appoint a parliamentarian, that the parliamentarian actually
does
is
a job.
familiar with. You have to be you should be a professional expert in parliamentary procedure.
But your parliamentarian
It's
has
Herb
an
Smith.
ideological position and only does.
No. Our parliamentarian is Herb Smith.
Oh, Herb Smith?
Herb Smith.
I've seen Mr. Smith, who I don't know at all, get up and walk out of a meeting.
Our parliamentarian is Herb Smith.
People talking.
And our
He didn't know Robert's
attorney,
rules of order. He was constantly calling Rinzer over.
well, and this is where the problem is. When you don't know,
Clean
and
house.
you, and this is the thing, when there's anarchy, when there's no order, when the people who are in charge don't know the rules, you have chaos.
That's right.
And so
Yes.
we're operating in a chaotic environment. Now, I worked for the Department of Child Services for 15 years, okay? I ran the child abuse hotline, was the manager over the child abuse hotline, the investigators there, and so forth. And it was a chaotic environment. But we had to have rules in order to arrange the chaos, because you never know when a child was going to get injured.
That's right.
Okay, we had to send people out all day and all night. It was 24/7 operation. So rules were important. And when we put the rules on paper, they became our Bible. And everybody in my department knew, you know what
The rules say.
you know what the rules say. And if you didn't know the rules, you better ask somebody, because the next person, you're going to be held responsible whether you know them or not. And this is our problem, is that we don't hold our officials accountable for not knowing and not studying their craft. No way should you be a president and not know Robert's Rules of Order.
How
It
can they
shouldn't be
make
allowed.
a parliamentarian of someone who didn't know Robert's Rules of Order?
Because it was a political decision.
Because it was a political decision. I think we have a caller.
We do have
I
a
hope this caller can shed light or shed darkness. Caller?
Are you with us?
Hello. That is correct. Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. And
Well,
and
Maybe.
uh-huh. Yes. Yes.
So the
Maybe
question that
Mhm.
you're asking is whether GEO might come back in a new guise, perhaps
Mhm.
even as the federal government. But you know, the federal government no longer uses GEO or any private. Yes.
Well, let's.
No, well, the federal government does contract with them. But the federal government has, in terms of the immigrant prisons, said they will no longer be contracting with private prison companies. But GEO has actually changed its business. It now is specializing in preparing prisoners to go back into society.
And they're gonna backdoor it and get in.
And they're
Wow.
gonna backdoor it.
Yeah.
They've now taken up all these other duties so they can make money not only out of mass incarceration, but out of the end of mass incarceration
Right.
by taking over jail to street operations.
Right.
So,
And-
Carla, I understand what you're saying, that the government themselves might come in and try to propose it, and then on that, in that proposal, they're gonna make a way for GEO somehow.
Well,
some
well, we.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, the movie. Absolutely. You too.
Thank you so much.
And hang on, because I want to explain a couple things.
Yes.
The federal government, the Obama administration,
Yes.
will not be using private prisons to house federal prisoners. Okay? They made that decision because they found that there was no cost savings. Okay?
And there were
And that the
downsides.
Right.
programs were not rehabilitative. We have a new administration coming in. Okay? And we don't know what the Trump administration is going to do, because he's supposed to be rounding up
He's the law and
all
order
of the
candidate.
immigrants that are supposed to be deported back. So they're going to need somewhere to stay.
That's right.
But there is current legislation being proposed in the Indiana State Assembly that states that the state of Indiana will not allow private federal prisons, prisons being funded by the city, private prisons being funded by the state, no private prisons in the state of Indiana. And I believe that legislation, it was proposed simply for the GEO group. So that is on the dockets for this particular.
Yeah, we have to do our research on this one,
Yeah.
because in any form, GEO is a really criminal operation.
Right.
Let's get back to the city ordinance that could be passed to change the way the Gary Redevelopment Commission works.
And what would have to happen again, I believe, is a veto-proof majority, because the mayor would veto
Of course.
anything that
Takes her power.
and takes away the ability for the appointments and the private contracts and the private consulting and the private professional services. And that is definitely her option, as this is the way that she wants to run her administration. You know, we do different things. Processes are different. We may think that we all want to rebuild the city, but how we rebuild the city, we're going to differ. Okay?
And that difference, I think, affects people, the residents of the city, very different. And I think that is it mirrors what's happening right now in our national government. There are factions,
Right.
that are they're here. They're elected to some of the same positions, but there are factions, and people have very different ideas about how they want to push forward the country.
Absolutely.
And I think that we, as a unfortunately, mostly non-informed public, believe I won't say rhetoric, believe the story that has often been told about that everybody's in it for the same thing, and that's not always true. And then two, even if you are, the way you get there can be extremely detrimental to the people you're supposed to be serving.
Right, it could be.
Well, I think we saw with GEO that if enough people are mobilized and
Absolutely.
informed, and there's building in different districts and locally, I was thinking about the fact that mostly when there's meetings, they're being called by the council person, and there's a lot of control in how those meetings happen.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, this whole idea of a popular assembly or a series of popular assemblies where people in a neighborhood come together and talk about, without somebody telling them what to think or telling them, how to think, that people want development that invests in people and not just buildings, not just roads,
Right.
and certainly not companies.
Right.
And I think the fundamental difference, unfortunately, that the mayor's development agenda is based on investment in companies and financial transactions, and nothing really invested in the people themselves.
And being able to see something come out of their investment, being able to see something that validates them, that reflects the fact that they got up, that they got out, that they came to a meeting, that they spoke their mind, that they spoke their being able, and that's important. Validating people's participation is important, or else why are they going to participate if they never see anything come of it?
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I think one thing, especially for the city here, oftentimes we put the cart before the horse. It is no secret when you ride through our city and you look at our city and you keep going south or you keep going east or you keep going west, and just beyond the borders, the city that is adjacent to our city looks a little bit better than our city does. And
sometimes more than a little.
And sometimes more than a little. And
look at our high schools and then go over to Portage and look at their high school
And the roads.
Well, the high schools that we have left,
that we have
Yes.
the
left.
middle schools that we have left, the elementary schools that we have left. And this is what happens. I'm not, what's the word that I want to use? In some la-la land, thinking that, this is Gary.
And we have
we're
everything going for us.
That's not what it is.
Right.
For me, number one, public safety. We've got to get a handle on the crime that occurs in our city. That's number one. People don't come here because of crime. And we can cloak, it can be a cloak and dagger thing. We can dismiss all of the allegations and whatnot. But this is the fact. People don't come here because of the perception that there is crime in the city.
The perception, because Chicago, of course, is so much worse.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Right,
But they have a beautiful skyline.
And we have
You
to talk
can
about
walk-
what goes into that crime. And I know that's what
Yeah.
I know that's where logically that leads to.
Right.
But I think unfortunately all too often we come to an inaccurate conclusion about what it means to do something about crime.
Yeah.
Because it goes right into poverty. It
Absolutely.
Goes right into
Absolutely
what
it
else
does.
young people have to do other than be
Absolutely.
out getting into trouble.
Absolutely. And this is what I'm trying to, as I lead into this, is first we have to do public safety. And if we do not have a school system,
Right.
a public school system
We must have a public school system.
that meets the needs of our children, what young family is going to move here? And these are the problems that need to be addressed first before we do an light industrial park.
Because the only types of businesses that we're going to attract are businesses that are going to mean a negative impact to people, because it's not people that we have in
Absolutely.
mind when we attract.
Well, there's quite a
Absolutely.
few small Chicago companies that don't want to pay the Illinois minimum wage or the Chicago minimum wage.
Right.
They want to come to Gary, pay $7.25 without benefits, and hire and fire people at will.
Who don't even live in Gary, by the way. The majority
Yeah,
of people
right.
who get
Well,
those
let's-
low-wage jobs aren't going to be residents.
And let's talk about that for a minute. During our past budget session, we made some concessions, and one of those things was that we wanted the citizens of Gary to work for the city of Gary. We requested, first of all, the information in regards to residency, and we asked for the administration to provide for us names of those folk who did not reside in the city of Gary.
Was it 19 people?
There were 98 people.
98 people.
Initially, when I was counting, I counted up 88 because that's what on my spreadsheet I miscounted. There are 98 people who work in the city of Gary who do not reside in the city of Gary, and I've been talking about this one for a long time because the Genesis Center, in which we have low-skilled jobs, bartenders and cooks and waitresses and folk like that, 22 do not live in the city of Gary, and it is a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot when you're talking about $7.25 an hour. It's a lot when instead of being on food stamps, instead of being on AFDC, I think they call it TANF now.
Yeah, 10.
Instead of being on that, you can go out and get you a decent paying job. And so, as we looked at the things that we could and could not do during the course of the budget session, one of those things that we were requesting from the administration was that they begin to enforce the residency ordinance that is already on the books. It's not like we don't have one. We have a residency
It's like our
ordinance.
local hire ordinance,
Like our local hire ordinance.
which
Let's
they
enforce
ignore
it.
all the time.
Absolutely. And part of the reason why we are in the condition that we are in is because of the lack of enforcement.
That's right.
And who's in?
Well,
in in what? I won't ask who. I'll say what. In what interest position? What position could exist that it could be the interest of that position to not enforce that? That's so simple. We still have a lot of people in Gary. It's declining, but there's still a lot of people who choose to live here.
Right. Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt, as we were, again, going through the budget session, because the budget session is the most powerful season for the council. It's the fiscal body. It's our responsibility to appropriate the funds, okay? Councilwoman Wyatt discovered an ordinance that says that all attorneys who work for a city must reside in the county.
the city.
Not in the,
no,
not in the
no,
city.
in the county.
In the county.
Uh-oh.
Okay, in the county. So, we have a city attorney, and this is one of the things I got to follow up on because I got to make sure that it's being enforced. We had a city attorney who lived in Indianapolis, making $75,000 a year,
Wow.
and
We probably
We-
paid his travel expenses.
we
too.
have attorneys in the county who would like to make that kind of money,
Yeah.
being a city
Absolutely.
attorney
Yes,
for the city of
absolutely.
Gary. Okay, our corporation counsel was on contract instead of being a salaried employee because they thought that they could live outside the city, outside the county,
With a contract.
as a contractor. But the state ordinance says that you must reside in the county. So hopefully that will be enforced.
How many people in the city government are contractors or consultants?
We have no idea, and this is part of the issue. There's so many different funding sources that under professional services and redevelopment, you can have some, and for professional services and the Economic Development Corporation, you can have some. In each department's budget, you can have professional services, and what happens is they'll give you a stack of paper like this, and you have to go through each line item to see where the money is going, and it may say, $100,000 to Barnes and Dietrich. Well, what is Barnes and Dietrich? I don't know what that is. Is that a consultant? Is that a law firm? What is that? And so unless you have time every single day, you cannot believe the amount of paper that we get. It is unimaginable. I've got stack of paper like this that I have to shred at this point, but it just demonstrated to me how much information goes forth and how much time that we really have to spend.
Well, information that's in a form that is not digestible.
Yes,
right.
yes.
And that should be a requirement.
Yes.
Information be provided in the form that the council requests.
Absolutely.
And there are laws like that in the workplace. A
Right.
union contract gets you the right to information.
Right, absolutely.
But I think that's a big problem. Didn't Van Dyke work for Daley in Chicago before he came here?
I am not aware of his previous work history.
Okay. I'm just wondering because I don't think was a Gary resident.
No, he was not. He came over, I believe, during the Clay administration, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, there are so many
holdover
talented people in
Yeah.
this area.
Absolutely, absolutely, there is.
Now, speaking
and-
about...
They don't have the opportunity to realize that talent because what are they going to do with it?
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Where
right.
do they see the opportunity to do something?
Right, and which is another reason, we really hammered home residency. We signed a letter at the beginning of the year. There were 7 council members who signed it. And we said that we wanted the administration to enforce residency. And during budget session, we let them know that we may not fund those departments in which they did not adhere to the residency. Well, how can we be so hypocritical in our own enforcement by continuing to have a non-resident as our attorney? Because and this is one of the things that we were trying to say.
Right.
It's
Hold
not
the
that
mirror up.
we don't like Renzer. That's not what it is. Renzer doesn't live in Gary, and he's been
And it's not just the attorney. He has how many jobs?
well,
At
The
least
power,
3, I was
the
told.
reach of those judges, that's the thing. I mean,
And they contradict each other, that he could sit on the zoning board and vote one way and then give advice to certain people on the common council.
and hold up the progress of the Common Council.
and
That's
this
right.
is where the issue is. So
You were talking
again-
about public safety.
yes, let's
I
talk
want
about
to
safety.
take safety a step further and talk about, it made me so sad, to talk about what I just found out through the Hoosier Environmental Council,
Uh-huh.
that a new consent decree
Yes.
has been issued, and we have until January 19th to comment on it, and it's in relationship to a complaint filed, refiled, filed again and again against the city of Gary.
Right.
9 times?
Well, no, but many times. There are 9 violations
Oh, okay.
of the Clean Water Act.
9.
9 major charges. And they include things like the sand filters not working, so they just bypass them.
Right.
They are never supposed to release anything in dry weather. There's dry weather releases. The bottom line is there are so many problems with the water facility that E. coli, along with other contaminants, are regularly released into the water, contaminating the Grand Calumet, Lake Michigan, and the water we drink. And It is a rather large document,
Yes, it is.
a very large document,
it is.
which I did read, but it doesn't mean I understood everything. But the main thing that was very clear is that, one, the city has maintained an account that has over $2 million in it because the city has to pay for remediation.
Right.
But the city has not done
The
remediation on any of these charges that date back, I think, to the 80s, if not earlier.
Can I just interject here? First of all, I was not aware. Again, of this
That's right.
consent decree until you brought it to my attention, and thank you so much.
Whose job is it to make the common council members
You know,
aware?
the thing is, we don't have a staff, okay?
Which is,
But that doesn't fall under the duty of the president.
well, the president seems to not do his job at all.
Oftentimes, information is not disseminated down to us, even if the president does have it. So, you know, and that's one of those political things that we have to fight on another day. But
And you know that the special administrator for the Gary Sanitary District is the mayor.
Yes.
And she gets paid about $60,000 for
Yes.
doing that.
Yes.
Like she needed more income.
Yes.
The kind of
And
disdain, though. It's the
and
kind of
yet,
disdain folks have
They have
for
not
common
told,
council members.
they haven't told the public, they haven't told the common council,
Right.
and they have not remediated our drinking water.
And we only have a week for public comment.
That's right,
Okay.
because we didn't find out until somebody from the Hoosier Environmental Council contacted Cheryl.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so what we're doing, we have asked for an emergency meeting with the mayor
Okay.
because I am tired of drinking, you know what?
Absolutely. And
Your
here
E.
is that
coli.
openness and that transparency again. Ruth, when I read, first of all, I read as much as I possibly could. It was a couple of very large documents. But the one that I honed into was the proposed consent decree and those things that the federal government is requiring of the city of Gary and the Gary Sanitary District. And I'm just going to read a couple of those things off. Is to develop and implement a control, I don't have my glasses here, a control plan addressing discharges from the Gary Sanitary District's combined sewer overflow. And I just lost my, do you have that?
I
Do you have that
have
portion?
only fragments of it here.
Okay.
But there is overflow discharge because there is equipment that's not functioning.
Okay.
They bypass the equipment to get rid of it, which is illegal. And then they've done no remediation after all these years. And this goes back, I don't know, to the 80s, I'm pretty sure.
And they're finding us $75,000.
Right.
Oh, but then
Yeah.
there's, wait a second. There's, in terms of compensation, in terms of the penalties, defendants shall pay $1,000 per day for each day on which civil penalty to either the United States or the state of Indiana is not made by the due dates, and they bypassing of treatments, defendants shall pay $500 a day per bypass, per treatment unit. And they will also pay for dry weather discharges per discharge. I think it's $500 a day for each dry weather discharge. And after 10 days, it goes to $1,250.
Wow.
We're going to take a caller real quick.
Okay.
Caller, are you there?
Hi, caller.
Hello. Real
Good.
good. How about yourself? No, what I'm saying is No, what I'm saying is we have an ordinance on the books. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Council.
Okay. We have an ordinance on the books that states that the city of Gary requires that the employees, those people who work for the city, must reside in the city. I didn't create the ordinance. This ordinance has been on the books for decades.
And almost every city
Almost every city
has an ordinance.
You cannot work for the city of Hammond if you do not live in the city of Hammond. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. We're not the only city that has the ordinance on. Yeah, it is.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Say that again. If I would want my child to follow the rules, that's what I would. No, my child is not an adult, but I said I would want my child to follow the rules. I would want my child to be an example, to say that, hey, if the rule says that I have to live in the city and I want to work for the city, then I will make that decision to move into the city of Gary. I can't be a council person if I don't live in the city of Gary. I have to live in the district. When I run for office, I have to live in the district in which I run for. I'm talking about rules. I'm talking about. So what you're saying is we shouldn't follow the rules. What you're saying is we shouldn't follow the rules. What you're saying is we shouldn't follow the rules. Scott.
See, I think the critical thing here is we want people who care about the city because they live in it to be making decisions